It was a warm morning in the sunny city of Miami, United States. The city was waking up. Cars were honking as they filled the streets, people were walking to work, and tourists were excitedly exploring new places. The sun was shining brightly, making the roads hot, but the fresh ocean breeze made everything feel nice and cool. Lionel Messi was driving his big truck through the streets. He liked to drive calmly, enjoying the peaceful moments. He was used to noise. After all, he had spent his whole life in busy places, playing soccer in front of thousands of people. But when he was alone in his truck, he could just relax and be himself. It was just a normal day for Messi in Miami. After his soccer practice at Inter Miami's training facility, he liked to take his mornings slowly. Some days he walked on the beach, feeling the soft sand under his feet. Other times he drove through the city, taking in the view and enjoying the quiet time. After many years of living in the busy city of Barcelona, he was still getting used to Miami, but he liked it here. It felt like home. But today something happened that was not normal. As Messi reached 8th Street, he passed by a small park filled with big green trees and tall palm trees. It was a peaceful place, where people usually sat on benches or walked their dogs. But something caught Messi's eye, a golden retriever standing alone on the sidewalk. At first, Messi thought it was just another dog waiting for its owner. Maybe someone was nearby, getting coffee or talking to a friend. But as he drove a little closer, he realized something was wrong. The dog wasn't running or playing. It wasn't wagging its tail happily like most golden retrievers. It was just standing there, still and quiet, staring into the distance. Messi slowed down his truck and rolled down the window to take a better look. Something inside him told him this wasn't just a lost dog. There was something sad in its eyes, something lonely. The dog's golden fur was dirty, and its body looked weak, as if it hadn't eaten in a long time. Messi stopped his truck completely. The sound of the engine made the dog lift its head. It looked at Messi for a moment, and its big brown eyes showed sadness. It didn't bark or wag its tail. Instead, it just stared at him. Then, after a moment, the dog took a small step toward the truck. It looked like it wanted to come closer, but it didn't have the energy to run. Messi looked around. The street was usually busy, but now it was strangely empty. There was no one nearby who could be the dog's owner. Messi frowned. Something didn't feel right. The dog had a collar around its neck, but there was no tag with a name or phone number. That meant no one was looking for it. It wasn't just lost, it had been left behind. Messi felt a strong feeling in his heart. He knew he couldn't just drive away and leave the dog there. He opened his truck door and stepped out slowly. He didn't want to scare the dog. The dog lifted its head higher and watched Messi carefully. But it didn't move away. It didn't seem scary. Instead, it looked like it was waiting for someone to help. Messi took slow steps toward the dog. "What happened to you, buddy?" he asked in a soft voice. Then he reached out and gently touched the dog's head. At first, the dog hesitated. It wasn't sure if it could trust him. But then, after a moment, it leaned into Messi's hand. The touch seemed to bring the dog a little comfort. Messi felt his heart tighten. The dog's body was too thin, and its fur was rough and dirty. It must have been alone for a long time. He looked around once more, hoping to see someone who might be the owner. But the street remained empty. "Don't worry," Messi said softly. "I won't leave you here." He had made his decision. Messi walked back to his truck and opened the back door. Then he turned to the dog and spoke gently. "Come on, hop in." The dog hesitated. It looked at the open truck door, then back at Messi. It seemed unsure. Maybe it had been hurt before. Maybe it didn't believe someone would actually help it. Messi waited patiently. Then, after a long moment, the dog took a deep breath, as if gathering its courage. Slowly, it climbed into the back seat of the truck and lay down. Messi smiled and carefully closed the door. As he started driving again, he kept glancing at the dog through the rearview mirror. The dog was still quiet, but there was a small change in its eyes. They were still sad, but now there was something else, a tiny spark of hope. Messi didn't know what had happened to the dog before today. Maybe it had been someone's pet. Maybe it had a family once. But one thing was certain. From now on, the dog would never be alone again. Messi decided to take it home, to its new home in Sunset Grove. As he drove through the quiet streets of Miami, Messi couldn't stop thinking about the dog. How could someone abandon such a loving animal? He had always loved dogs. He knew how much love and loyalty they gave to their owners. He couldn't understand how anyone could just leave a dog behind like this. When he finally arrived home, Messi parked the truck in the driveway. He got out and opened the door for the dog. The dog was still a little unsure, but something had changed. It wasn't looking around like it was lost anymore. Now it had a place to go. Messi led the dog toward his house. The dog sniffed the air, taking in the new surroundings. Everything was different from the streets, but here it was safe. Messi reached down and gently patted the dog's head. "Welcome to your new home," he said with a smile. The dog didn't understand the words, but it understood the kindness in Messi's voice. It wagged its tail just a little. Then it slowly walked to the garden. It found a shady spot under a big tree and lay down. Then it let out a deep sigh, as if all the worries it had been carrying for so long were finally fading away. Messi stood there for a moment, watching the dog rest. He felt a deep sense of peace. He knew he had done the right thing. The dog had been abandoned. It had been alone. But now it would never have to feel that way again. It didn't matter what had happened in the past. What mattered was the future. And in this future, the dog would always have food, love, and a warm home. With one last look at the dog, Messi stepped into his house. The warm afternoon sun filled the room with golden light, casting long shadows on the floor. He knew that it wasn't just the dog starting a new life. Something inside Messi had changed too. Now he has a friend. A friend who would always stay by his side no matter what. A new beginning. Messi's house in Sunset Grove was big, with beautiful gardens all around. There were tall trees, soft green grass, and colorful flowers swaying in the breeze. It was a peaceful place where everything felt calm and safe. His life had always been busy. He was one of the best football players in the world. People cheered for him, chanted his name, and watched him play with admiration. He had won many trophies and medals. But now his life had a new purpose. That morning, he had rescued a dog from the streets of Miami. The dog had been alone, wandering with no food and no home. Messi didn't expect it, but this dog gave him something special. A friendship that felt different from the love of fans or the joy of winning games. It was simple, pure, and very important. That evening, Messi made sure the dog was comfortable. First, he let the dog rest in the garden, watching as it sniffed the air and looked around, unsure of its new surroundings. Then Messi went inside and found a soft cushion. He placed it in a quiet corner of the living room and covered it with a warm blanket. Now the dog has a home. Messi wanted to give the dog everything it needed: food, love, and most of all, safety. He didn't want the dog to ever feel scared or alone again. He didn't want the dog to feel like no one cared. The golden retriever was tired, but it seemed happy in its new home. That afternoon, Messi watched as the dog walked slowly around the garden, its paws touching the grass as if it had never felt something so soft before. But every few steps, the dog turned back to check if Messi was still there. The dog wasn't angry or aggressive, but Messi could tell it had been hurt before. There were no cuts or bruises, but the way it moved and the sadness in its eyes told Messi that it had been abandoned. It had been left alone to survive in the world. Messi walked over and sat next to the dog under the shade of a tree. He gently stroked its golden fur, feeling how thin and rough it was. "Everything will be okay," Messi whispered. The dog lifted its head and looked at him. Its eyes were still full of sadness, but something was different. Messi saw a tiny spark of trust. The dog wasn't as afraid anymore. It stayed there, resting while Messi sat beside it on the grass. From that day on, Messi's routine changed. Before, he only woke up to train and play football. But now, he also woke up to take care of his new friend. Every morning, before leaving for training, Messi made breakfast for the dog. He filled a bowl with food and placed it down. The dog wagged its tail, happy but still a little unsure. It was as if it couldn't believe that it would always have food now. At first, the dog ate slowly, almost as if it was afraid the food would disappear. Messi sat nearby, watching, waiting patiently. Over time, the dog began to trust that there would always be more food tomorrow. But the biggest change happened when Messi saw the dog slowly heal. In the weeks that followed, the dog started to get better. Its fur, once dirty and tangled, became soft and shiny. Its body, once thin and weak, became strong again. And its eyes? Its eyes were no longer full of fear. The bond between Messi and the dog grew stronger every day. Messi had many dogs before, but this one felt different. This one felt special. One day, after training at the stadium in Miami, something amazing happened. When Messi came home, the dog was waiting at the door. It was as if the dog knew exactly when he would return. The golden retriever, now stronger and full of energy, ran toward Messi, wagging its tail happily. It jumped up, excited to see him. Messi laughed and crouched down to hug him. "How are you, buddy?" he asked, petting the dog as it licked his face. At that moment, Messi felt something deep in his heart. It was like this dog had come into his life at the perfect time. Maybe Messi saved the dog from the streets, but maybe the dog saved Messi too. As time passed, Messi and his dog, whom he had named Tony, became even closer. Tony was no longer scared. He followed Messi everywhere, slept near him, and even came along to some training sessions. After a long day, Messi would take time to walk or play with Tony. Tony wasn't just a pet. He was family. Tony's body changed too. He gained weight and became strong again. His eyes were full of happiness and he loved running on the beach with Messi. Every day, Tony ran through the sand, jumping and playing. It was like he had forgotten all the sadness from before. Life was finally good for him. Then something wonderful happened. One afternoon, after Messi finished training and took a shower, he looked out his bedroom window. Tony was sitting in the garden, staring at the horizon. His head was held high and his ears were alert. Messi smiled. Tony finally felt at home. Then suddenly Tony jumped up and started running toward Messi. He ran as fast as he could, wagging his tail and bouncing with excitement. When he reached Messi, he stopped and looked up at him. His eyes were shining with happiness. Messi knelt down and hugged him. And in that moment he realized something important. Messi had saved Tony. But Tony had also saved Messi. Their bond was stronger than any trophy or medal. Because sometimes true champions aren't the ones who win games. Sometimes true champions are the ones who find happiness in the simplest moments. Messi smiled and gently stroked Tony's fur. "Thank you, Tony," he whispered. The dog curled up beside him, completely at peace. That evening, Messi sat in the garden with Tony, watching the sunset over Miami Bay. The sky was a mix of orange and pink, and the air was warm. Tony rested by his side, safe and happy. At last he had found where he truly belonged. A home, a family, a forever friend. If you enjoyed this story, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more exciting stories filled with adventure, mystery, and unforgettable moments. Your support means the world. It keeps these stories coming and the creativity flowing. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.